Time now for Financial Friday on WOMI with your host, Drew Watson, sponsored by Align Wealth Management.
Maker Incorporated.
Hello and welcome to Financial Fridays, brought to you by Align Wealth Management. And boy, do we have a fantastic show for you today, Friday, June 9th, 2023. Markets had a pretty decent week, nothing to break the bank, but every week that's positive is better than a week going negative. Yesterday's action saw the S&P up about 26 points, closing at 4293. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was up about 168 points and change to 33,833. The tech-heavy NASDAQ Composite was up 133 to 13,238. After the bell, the news came out that Tesla continues to strike some deals with what I would call analog car makers for supercharger networks, including, I think now General Motors as well as Ford. We did have, in the commodity space, oil was down just a touch. West Texas Intermediate crude is hovering right around the $71 a barrel, down 160 yesterday to 70.93. Gold was up 25.73 to 19.65 an ounce. In the agricultural commodity spaces, we still see live cattle punching up close to $180 per 100 pounds, but rest of the commodities were somewhat subdued. And in the interest rate space, the 10-year Treasury benchmark is at 3.71%, 30-year at 3.88%. Those are both still under the 90-day Treasury, which is at 5.13. As I said, we've got a great show for you lined up today, so keep listening to Financial Fridays right here at this station, brought to you by Align Wealth Management. We'll be back after a word from our sponsors.
What do you want to do when you grow up? When we were young, it's a question we were often asked. As we get older, our passions become clearer. Our pursuits become careers. And if we're diligent, we begin to plan for the life we want to live. That's why at Ameriprise Financial, we ask, what's most important to you? Starting with our Confident Retirement approach, your Ameriprise Financial Advisor will ask questions that will help you arrive at a customized plan that can help you realize your goals today, tomorrow, and throughout retirement. With the right financial advisor, life can be brilliant. Call Align Wealth Management, a private wealth advisory practice of Ameriprise Financial Services, Inc., today at 270-684-8424. That's 270-684-8424. Office is located at 2708 New Hartford Road in Owensboro, Kentucky. The Confident Retirement approach is not a guarantee of future financial results. Investment advisory products and services are made available through Ameriprise Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisor.
Hello and welcome back to Financial Fridays, brought to you by Align Wealth Management. I'm your host, Drew Watson, and we're going to take a deeper dive into some investment and economic news in this segment that we always do. And we will take a look at a couple things today as the markets have been really rallied after last week's show on Friday. We've had kind of a decent week this week, but certainly what we've seen is a pretty good move in markets that have continued on to this week. And we're going to take a deeper dive into first what the consumers are looking like, and then kind of some divergences going on globally. First and foremost, there's not a recommendation to buy or sell any securities. We're just kind of providing some information here, in this case from our friends at Ameriprise's investment research group. And if you look at the consumer spending outlook, it appears that consumer spending is showing signs of moderating but remains resilient despite a lot of the macro pressures out there, such as inflationary cost pressures and lower consumer confidence. Households have become more selective with consumer spending choices and have been trading down. But overall, spending has been relatively solid. It's been impressive to see the strength of certain consumer discretionary categories such as lodging and leisure travel. And there is a belief that household spending could continue to remain resilient unless there is a material deterioration in the labor market. As an example of moderating but resilient consumer spending in the lodging industry, i.e. hotels, according to Smith Travel Research U.S., the lodging industry revenue per available room growth, or RevPAR, has slowed to the low single-digit growth. During the week ending May 26, U.S. lodging industry RevPAR grew 3.6% year over year. During the comparable period last year, lodging industry RevPAR was up 33.9% year over year, and lodging industry demand growth has slowed, but still remains surprisingly solid despite these headwinds. So if you look, that RevPAR was, above 30, as recently as in January, then last fall, and then last summer. Wow. Another example of resilient consumer spending in the U.S. overall retail industry. And according to Redbook, U.S. retail industry comparable store sales growth has also slowed to low single digits. During the week ending May 27th, retail industry comparable store sales increased 1.2% year over year, according to Redbook. During the comparable period last year, retail industry comparable sales were up 12.6% year over year. Growth has slowed materially over the past year, but growth remains positive. One of the primary things that we believe should really have a negative impact on consumer spending is a weak labor market. If households fear they will lose their jobs, that could have a significant negative impact on consumer spending. Despite recent corporate headlines of layoffs, unemployment is still pretty low, really at 3.7%. Now, also something that is kind of propping everything up could be favorable household balance sheets, and that could continue to be a tailwind for consumer spending. Therefore, unless there is a shock to the system that causes a significantly weaker labor market, i.e. lots of job cuts, consumer spending could continue to be resilient for a while. So, one thing to keep in mind is as we've kind of gone through some of the earnings over the last few weeks that have come out with regards to, consumer spending and where they are, so to speak, it's clear some discretionary spending, such as on streaming services, has definitely been reduced. And if you look earlier in the week, on Monday, the Institute of Supply Management's U.S. Services Index came in notably below expectations, posting a reading of 50.3 for the month of May versus an expected 52.1. This is the lowest reading for services since December's 49.9. Despite the shortfall, report components still reflected month-over-month growth, which is in contrast to the recent contractionary conditions, say below 50, the number 50, reported in the ISM's manufacturing index. As a reminder, these measures are diffusion indexes, meaning numbers above 50 month-over-month indicate growth, while numbers below 50 indicate contraction. So here's the basic theme of this. Expansion in the service sector and moderate contraction in the manufacturing space is a theme being reflected around the world, not just here in the U.S. Service sector diffusion indexes have generally been accelerating in recent months in which manufacturing measures have mostly been in contraction. The weak U.S. ISM Services Index mentioned above was also an outlier. The Markit, M-A-R-K-I-T, U.S. Services Index posted a business activity reading of 54.9 for the month versus 55.1 in April, thus suggesting a much stronger pace of sector growth relative to the ISM reading. So you might say, what's driving this divergence? in the view of the Investment Research Group, the same factors that are driving the separation here in the U.S. are influencing the trends internationally. During the pandemic, as people were generally isolated in their homes, they continued to spend on household goods, apparel, toys, etc., and that was mainly due to, shopping online, internet delivery, while their ability to consume services such as travel, leisure, and entertainment were significantly curtailed. That would kind of go into what I mentioned at the top of this segment about the lodging index. A reversal of those trends is currently ongoing. Additionally, sharply higher interest rates have slowed housing sales and the new spending on appliances, furniture, and other household capital goods that normally goes along with that. So although these are slowing, it may be that this is all part of just what an economy does after interest rates have increased and things have kind of moved on. Keep listening to Financial Fridays. We'll be back in 60 seconds after a word from our sponsor.
When today is unpredictable, you need sound advice and strong support to help you stay focused on your long-term financial goals for tomorrow. Ameriprise has been guiding clients through challenging times for over 125 years. You can take comfort in working with an advisor who's backed by that strong experience and who's there to guide you with personalized, goal-based financial advice. Together, you and your Ameriprise advisor can plan your future while navigating your now. Call Align Wealth Management, a private wealth advisory practice of Ameriprise Financial Services, LLC, today at 270-684-8424. That's 270-684-8424. Office is located at 2708 New Hartford Road in Owensboro, Kentucky.
Hello and welcome back to Financial Fridays, brought to you by Align Wealth Management. I'm your host, Drew Watson, and in our financial planning segment this week, we are going to take a deeper dive into legal documents that everyone should need to have, specifically with regards to not just a will, but the other documents that go along with the will, such as kind of power of attorney documents and or healthcare power of attorney documents. And there's also things like guardianship. So we'll try to break down today some information on these that hopefully will be helpful. As it pertains to power of attorney documents, on a general power of attorney, what you're giving someone is the authority to act on your behalf in financial and legal matters while you are still alive. So sometimes these power of attorneys can be a springing power of attorney in case you are incapacitated, and then the power of attorney kind of quote-unquote comes to life. Or secondarily, they can just be a general power of attorney that as just that other person can act on your behalf. Now, obviously, and sometimes you can't say it enough, you must have an unbelievable amount of trust in the person that you would be appointing as your power of attorney, because as I've just said, they can literally act on your behalf while you are alive. Now, it's not uncommon that depending on how many financial relationships you have, that each one of those relationships would require some additional documentation to go along with your standard power of attorney document. Usually a power of attorney document is set forth based on whichever state you live in's state statute, and an attorney would take the applicable pieces of the state statute and create a power of attorney document around that, so it does work within the state statutes. And obviously, it's never an attorney, or hopefully it's not an attorney's goal to create something that's illegal on its face. But at the end of the day, the attorney will need to be making a power of attorney document that fits within the statutes of the state which you reside. Even though you have this document, it's not uncommon, that your investment place may want you to sign additional power of attorney documents, that your bank may have additional documents that go along with it. Because especially in this day and age, if they do business across state lines in a lot of different jurisdictions, really what they're wanting is just kind of a backup paperwork in case anything ever goes wrong, that you have acknowledged, this is my power of attorney. And I know we set it up under one state, but I want it to be able to be covered, basically nationally. So my experience would also let listeners know you don't want to be frustrated because at the end of the day, what we are looking at is situations that may include you having to converse with people that aren't familiar with what a power of attorney is. And I know it's tough, and I know it's frustrating, but at the end of the day, you will come in contact with individuals in this world that aren't up to speed on everything. And as hard as it may seem to believe, yes, you will come in contact with people at medical offices and medical billing places that have no idea what a healthcare power of attorney is, or a power of attorney, or a guardianship. Now, that's why it's also a very good best practice on your phone, even if you have like a photo album where you can have downloaded your important agreements, especially if you're a power of attorney for someone else or a guardian for someone else, because it is never stops to astound me how few people, especially in the professional ranks, understand what powers of attorney are, what guardianships mean, what healthcare power of attorneys mean, and you might need these documents even when you think you don't. So keep in mind, it's one thing to have the document created. Then secondarily, it's always good to know what the document is for and how it can help you. And then finally, it's being able to have access to the document when you need it, when in case, and unfortunately it happens regularly, you come across people that don't fully understand what these documents mean, what authority it gives the person that's been entrusted that power of attorney or guardianship. And it can not eliminate headaches, but make the headaches smaller because you are prepared. And if one thing life has taught me is preparation is about 80% of success. I will kind of quickly end this segment with regards to, I've what happens after death. But as I said, the power of attorney operates while you're alive. Whoever you appoint as executor or executrix of your estate, or some states have kind of gone gender neutral and say state administrator, whoever you have appointed in your will for those roles take on this characteristic once you pass. So the same kind of best practice about having maybe a little file in your phone for these documents, if you are someone's executrix or executor, take a picture, file it in your phone with your important papers. And you will also need, the most important piece of this is the court stamped filing where the judge has said, yes, this person is good to go to act in that capacity. And that can kind of get you on your merry way, because again, there's no telling where you will run into people that have no idea what any of this means. Keep listening to Financial Fridays right here on this station, brought to you by Align Wealth Management. We'll be back after a word from our sponsors.
What do you want to do when you grow up? When we were young, it's a question we were often asked. As we get older, our passions become clearer, our pursuits become careers, and if we're diligent, we begin to plan for the life we want to live. That's why at Ameriprise Financial, we ask, what's most important to you? Starting with our confident retirement approach, your Ameriprise Financial Advisor will ask questions that will help you arrive at a customized plan that can help you realize your goals today, tomorrow, and throughout retirement. With the right financial advisor, life can be brilliant. Call Align Wealth Management, a private wealth advisory practice of Ameriprise Financial Services, Inc., today at 270-684-8424. That's 270-684-8424. Office is located at 2708 New Hartford Road in Owensboro, Kentucky. The Confident Retirement Approach is not a guarantee of future financial results. Investment advisory products and services are made available through Ameriprise Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisor.
Hello and welcome back to Financial Fridays, brought to you by Align Wealth Management. I am your host, Drew Watson, private wealth advisor with Align, and this is the email bag segment of the show where we'll take your questions over the week and get them out on the air. And in looking at this, kind of the common questions this week that have come in, and feel free to email them to me at william.a.watson at ampf.com, have centered around, the market this year is kind of up, but where are we from the longer term? And I would tell you that this is an item that we kind of have discussed maybe about a month and a half ago, but generally speaking, if you've been invested for roughly, let's say, 2 years in the S&P 500, we are just back, really last week to where we were 2 years ago. I think the week of June 11th, 2021, the S&P closed at 4241. The peak that we hit would be roughly around 4816 the first week of January 22. And, of course, this week we've been, hanging around the high 4200 level on the S&Ps. So that's a long 2 years that you've been in and really not seen any growth. Now, that's not saying you haven't made any money, as the S&P does spit out, a nominal 1.5% dividend yield, in any given year. But we can definitely commiserate. You might feel like, hey, I'm kind of treading water. The chart of the Dow Jones Industrial Average over the last 2 years is a little bit more depressing. I mean, we were 2021 at about 34,756, so we're about 1,000 points below where we were 2 years ago on the Dow. The Dow topped out that first week in January 22 at roughly 36,840 and change. The lows put in last fall were around 28,000. So, definitely we had a bear market there, but that index is kind of worse off than what it was 2 years ago. And if you look at the NASDAQ index, it's quite a bit lower than 2 years ago. We were at around 14,046. So we're about 900 points below where we were 2 years ago on the NASDAQ. And the NASDAQ kind of bounced around from last summer to the fall to around the holidays in a big-time bear market consolidation pattern, and is just now kind of getting back to where it was. If you look at the small cap index, well, let's start with mid cap. The iShares Core Mid Cap, that's also about 2 years ago was at 274 is quoted. Now, it's down, still down roughly probably 8% from where it was a couple of years ago on the mid cap. Small cap index, the Russell 2000. It's a bigger scene of carnage. A couple of years ago, Russell was about 233. It's still 185. You're looking at probably a 20% move to the downside there. And so the question is, given kind of the stagnating market, is this something that's, for lack of a better term, normal when it comes to investing in stocks? So, at the end of the day, unfortunately, yes. I mean, stock prices move day to day, but if you step back over the last 2 years, you have not been, rewarded for being diversified in that, small cap stocks are off probably the most. At the end of the day, you need to have a diversified portfolio, as that's what, market forecasters and people like me will preach. But being in small stocks right now has been painful. And medium-sized stocks, typically, if you have a 15-year time frame, have performed from the index standpoint, have had superior performance than larger stocks. They are also too off about 9 or 10%. But if you're a believer in what's called mean reversion, that eventually performance will return to the mean, then you may feel better about where you are. But after a brief downturn last year, technology is back to the fore for performance. And last year, energy was the lead dog. Healthcare did well, and definitely both of those sectors have kind of taken a little bit of a breather this year. Now, energy's kind of come on with a really good move in the last week since the Saudis have announced they're going to cut oil production, and some of the OPEC plus countries are going to follow suit. But still, we haven't kind of blown the top off of the oil markets either. So, what we see is on a 2-year basis, if you're able to take some of the noise away, really we've had kind of an uneventful, I kind of cringe when I say that, 2-year period. If you were Rip Van Winkle and you went in a cave, fell asleep, came out 2 years later, you may not think we've been through a lot, but given the news cycle that we've had, we definitely it feels like it. So that leaves me at my final point for this week. I think what we all need to do is step back and realize that the media in this country may not be doing anyone a favor, because there's media that's on 24/7 in the form of Twitter, cable news, internet-based news, other news agencies. It's almost like they have to have something to report on. And for all of the angst and anxiety and hand clenching and, hand wringing that's gone on in the last 24 months, we're basically right back to where we started on a lot of major investment and commodity indexes. Now, living through it with the stress that the media places on us, I don't think has done anybody any favors. But doing this now for almost 30 years, I think next year will be my 30th year doing this. Really, there's not a lot to get worked up about. The market will kind of zig and zag over time. It kind of goes, as we say, up and to the right on the graph, so to speak. But it is clear that all the news that's supposedly great, supposedly terrible, really it doesn't do a lot to move the needle, and that it's market fundamentals. And generally, what I would say over the last 2 years with a lot of businesses, fundamentally we've had some decent growth. but there hasn't
This
been any
program
game
has been
changers
paid
really.
for by Rainmaker Incorporated.
This is WOMI Owensboro, 99.1 FM.